Joe Gagnon, we've known of each other now for several years. We talked when I completed the 2023 Quick Card Ride for Change. We had an amazing conversation. You immediately impressed me, not only with your background, but some of the advice you gave me. And we're also connected to another friend, a guy who likes to run named Dave Proctor. What I love about you guys is you all share so much of the same philosophy, and it's incredibly powerful stuff. And it's now ended up in this incredible book. I told you earlier I'm a slow reader. I've had this book for 2 days. I'm halfway through it. I read a lot of these books, Joe, and what I look for in a book like this is it's the ability to make it tactical in your life, like how I convert what you're saying to something I can actually execute upon. I get really tired of going onto social media and reading other books, and you don't know how to convert it into a tactical approach. Your book did that. So great job. Joe, why don't you tell everybody what gave you the right to write this book? Like, why should I read a book by this fellow named Joe? What has Joe done that has earned him the right?
Yeah, Matt, first, thank you. And I'm always sort of impressed with what you do too. So we're like fans, and that's good because I think we see in each other the opportunity, right? So the start is not the end of our lives, right? I always think it's a beginning, never an end. And so the first half of my career was very focused on making money, career advancement, and sort of living the life that everyone had told you you're supposed to live, right? Work hard, make a lot of money, buy stuff, join the country club, and no one finishes the sentence, right? And then sort of become miserable, unhappy, unfulfilled, not resilient, not vital, and probably very isolated. We need to finish the sentence. So I woke up 25 years ago one day and realized I couldn't run a mile, do a push-up, write a paragraph. I didn't have a sense of humor. I didn't know how to do anything other than work. And then over the next 25 years, what I've really worked to do is to go from this idea of, potential being infinite, to performance being the measurement, to being intentional, being connected to a why. And so the reason I felt confident writing the book was I have 25 years of building this from, one block in a spreadsheet of saying, this is what I did today, to having a set of experiences that are not just running, biking, swimming, adventuring, but being a multi-time entrepreneur, 6-time CEO, from being a writer, writing 4,000 days in a row, writing one book in 2017 to writing a second book now, to getting the opportunity to work with some of the best and the brightest on how do we actually apply sort of the underlying philosophies of how our human biology affects our day-to-day behaviors, and then just becoming a test subject. I literally have put myself through everything that you could say is hard and to try to term it normal. So my daily routine is pretty much the same. Someone said, what are the 3 words you start the day with? And, it's sort of like, other than wake up and brush your teeth, right? But it's move, it's write, and it's breathe. And I'm starting to control my system by doing that. These are not hard. Look, Matt, at the end of the day, none of this is hard concepts, but the execution is hard because the narrative that we're told is antagonistic to the way we should live. And so we have our lottery ticket in our pocket. We should cash it when we think about it, which means use the resource you have to reach into that potential. That potential, I'm not sure we'll ever find the limits of what it is. I haven't yet. I just recently finished the Badwater 135, which is supposedly the toughest ultramarathon in the world, 120 degrees in Death Valley, 3 mountain passes, etc. And I did it, and it felt very well within my capability set. That's something that even 5 years ago I couldn't have imagined doing. And so, but it is the integration. I'm still married 37 years later. I have 2 well-adjusted children who are adults who are doing their own thing. I feel like I'm contributing to society by doing coaching and advisory work. And I try and show up with a set of values and morals and a belief that there's a social contract that we all have that we should be accountable to by role modeling a behavior that actually talks about how abundance really takes form in our lives. the move from surviving to thriving, the opportunity to open the aperture and to feel something different. One of the things that's somewhat troubling is that the language that we use becomes limiting. I write about it in the book. The words of discomfort and suffering, of pain and failure, those are words of growth. Those are words of experience. Those are words of how we feel more about life. And we should seek them out, not be afraid of them. They become the pathway to what we want to become. And I get excited about it every day. I'm like a kid. I'm curious. I want to know. I want to feel. Every day I wake up, I want to lean harder into it. But it did take some time. So I think 25 years of practicing it tells me that I have some credibility, that I should write about it. And that's really why I wrote the book, was to try and take what I learned, put some frameworks around it, make it actionable, make it a bit of a story, talk just like you do, Matt, about the failures and the suffering, the challenges and the difficulty that we had. But then that was actually the opportunity to rise above. And that's what living intentionally is about. Connecting consciously to what we're going to go do so that we become the person we really want to be.
That's awesome. And what I really find neat about people like you is that you design your life and your approach to life, incorporating a lot of the philosophy and the methods that you mentioned in this book, and you see the results. There's no arguing. You forgot to mention that you ran 6 marathons on 6 different continents in 6 different days. I ran 7 marathons in 7 days, and I had a warm hotel room to go home to every night. I have no clue how you did that in coach class, sitting in the middle seat. And the only reason why I bring that up, because you're humble, is because that is a challenge in life that you designed, and you went out and you accomplished it. And you didn't just accomplish it, you smashed it. But your same philosophy works in your own personal life just as much as it works in the boardroom. How does your philosophy, especially with the background of being a CEO multiple times, multiple startup companies, how does your philosophy transfer into the boardroom, and what does it do for an organization if their leaders adopt that philosophy?
Yeah, the mindset, right? One of the 5 pillars of an intentional life is mindset. The framing that we have. When I started the 6 marathon, 6 continent challenge, I wrote down on a yellow sticky note, the lows will be the highs. And so I went looking for the lows, and I never found what would be felt like a low, because in fact, I defined it as the baseline. And so only everything above that was a high. It's the same in the boardroom. We're going to have quarters that we miss numbers. We're going to have competitors that are going to make our lives hard. We're going to have issues with investors or employees. These are all accepted. Those are the baseline. So those should never make us feel bad. They are just part of the game. Like, if you're playing hockey and you get checked into the boards, you don't sort of run back to the bench and cry and fuss. It's part of the game. We have defined it and accepted that checked into the boards is part of the game. And it's okay. And we have to do the same thing. The mindset going into the boardroom and being a leader is that it isn't precise. It's going to take some creativity. It's going to take this acceptance. And then stepping back and say, okay, well, what do we do about this? Rather than complaining that it seems unfair that someone else has some financial advantage because they raised more money, rather it's to say, what can we do with what we have? And so it's about sort of this mindset shift that happens that allows for divergent, in a good way, thinking that lets us be creative. And then it's the Stoic philosopher, which says, worry about what you can control, not what you can't control. And so then the magic that really happens, Matt, is that we all, let's say we index at 100% of energy. We're not pushing 40% of our energy out the window because we're worrying about something. We're using 100% of our energy to be creative, to be productive, to be competitive, to be the best in the world. And so when we bring our best self, it changes the game. Instead of falling into the trap, which is also, what happens in The quarterly numbers, we're off by that. We wanted to make our forecast. Well, yes, of course we should do a root cause analysis and we should be better for it. But if you fell off your bike while you're riding across Canada, that's not the end. Like that is just a moment along the way there. And the better you get at it, what happens is the baseline goes up and up and up. And before you realize it, your baseline is 5 or 10x what it used to be. You're operating at a high level of performance, even if you might not seem to feel that way. But you have elevated by how you react, how the team feels about you as a leader, how you empower them. And in some sense, I wouldn't say that it's easy, but it's not an intellectual leap to think about what makes us more productive.
It's amazing. How do you, when you talk about it, you talk about that individual and him having an impact on the culture, but in terms of elevating the culture, almost like the way I live my life as a leader, outside the boardroom, inside the boardroom, what is your opinion on how impactful that has on the culture?
Well, I think, yeah, it's 100% impact. But first, let's start with you have to have a set of core values that you never violate. First, we agree upon what those core values are. The company I run, our first core value is respect. We respect each other and every person in the organization, our customers, our competitors. And so that changes how we would talk about them. Teamwork is not a throwaway, right? That is, how are we leaning in to help each other? Nurturing, developing people. How are we promoting from within? Positivity. I think we have to remind ourselves every once in a while that actually, our neurobiology gets better when we feel positive. And lastly, being bold. So I start with those core values, and every time I remind our team about that, both through how we do recognition, but also how I encourage. Like, was that bold enough? Did you nurture your team? Oh, that wasn't that respectful. And so once you have core values, it actually is sustaining. If we look around the world at models that really succeeded over time, you will see how they don't negotiate on those. The second is that this is somewhat of like the funny of hypocrisy of life. We don't like something and then we go do it to someone else. When we say we want to be empowered or have an empowering organization, remember what that feels like, so you wouldn't take that away from anyone. When you say really empowering people, let them be empowered. Live to a world of exception management, not observation. Like, only talk about the things that need help, not the things that someone else should be deciding on. It shouldn't be your way, right? Worry about substance, not style. And so little by little, these subtle changes in how you manage, role model a new behavior, and then the team follows suit and they do it with their team. And then everyone defends the culture and the approach and the way. And so then you don't even have to actually do it yourself all the time, because it's created these rings of gravity and this strength in a system that people want to be part of. They defend it, they want to win through it, and they show up as their best selves. Because, by the way, if we got 100% out of every person on our team, we would be number one. There is no question about it, because very few operate at that level.
Yeah, that's amazing. I believe, and I'd like your opinion on this, that for an organization or a culture to thrive, the individuals leading that culture have to thrive. I don't believe a person that's coming through the doors on a Monday morning with this gray cloud, their shoulders are slouched, can come in and create a highly energized, high-performing team, elevate the culture if they themselves don't thrive.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a leader's responsibility to walk through those doors and be in that thriving state?
Well, I would say it's everyone's responsibility to do that. If the leader doesn't, I'm not sure why they're in that role. Like, let's be really clear. We only get one pass through on this life, right? As far as we understand. And we should fall in love with every day. Matt, I wrote about it in the book. Every day is a vacation day for me, because it's a mindset. Like, why wouldn't I love every day? The struggle, the intrigue, the difficulty, the fun, the connection, all of these things. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's no different than when, I ate peanut butter and jelly for lunch 5 years in a row, and every day I fell in love with it. Oh my God, I get to eat peanut butter and jelly today. Fall in love with the simplest things. Like, why would you dislike your life? Like, why not just love it? If you want to change it, that's fine, but bring that positivity. If you walk down the street and smile, it's hard for people not to smile. If you walk into a room and you're positive, it's hard for people not to be positive. And this is not Pollyanna. This is not to say, oh my gosh, things aren't happening around us. But let's use the positive energy. We've seen this in games. Watch a team play three great quarters, and the last one they start to play defensively, and all of a sudden they lose. Why? Because they lost the energy system that was making them a winner. And so we see it, we know it, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wake up every morning, both feeling grateful and blessed, but also a responsibility to remind ourselves that, hey, this is pretty special. Let me go get it.
Yeah, that's great. Joe, this has been amazing. I'm going to let everybody know we're going to be doing a deeper dive into this book, and we're going to be covering several topics, some of which I've talked to before, but now I can talk to them in a different light. But let's give everybody just a little bit of a preview of what some of those topics are going to look and feel like. I posted yesterday this concept of embracing the process of growth. Instead of focusing on the end result, I'm running 26.2 miles. Every day I got a little bit better. I went a little bit further. I ran a little bit faster. And whether that's kicking an addiction, losing weight, getting fitter, changing your lifestyle, in your book, you talk about the 1% rule. And I'm smiling from ear to ear because there's so much neuroscience behind what you say in that process. So give everybody just a quick preview. And this is just one of the topics we're going to be covering as we delve into this book further. What is the 1% rule?
Yeah, I think that first, it really is important to understand that our human biology can live in this sort of the state of survival and the state of thriving. And so when we recognize that, what we realize is that our body is actually made to thrive, but it can survive, which really isn't actually all that fun anyway. But our muscles can grow, our neurons can grow, mitochondria can grow, the effectiveness of our nervous system, the resiliency of our muscle system, which is our biggest organ in the body. All of our systems are made to develop and grow over time. And so what we find out is that when we start leaning into that and realizing that we're actually a growth machine, we have to go after the 1%, which is just a little bit more because it triggers the growth system to trigger, and so it's like if you're going to go run, I don't know, like let's say one time around the track, maybe run 1.5 times. If you're going to do a push-up, do 2. If you're going to write one paragraph, write 2. And so the 1%er is the person who then pushes one more level into. And then in that, we then continue to build a stronger and stronger foundation. And before we realize it, we've actually pulled away from everyone else who's in the survival state, and we're in the thriving state. And so it's compounding interest like in your bank account. If you put money in and you get 4% interest, it's not just 4% interest, it's 4% on top of the 104, on top of the 109, and it just keeps growing. And it's the same with our body. And so we get this disproportional benefit. And before we realize it, as crazy it might sound, you can end up in the top 1% in many categories in your life, which seems odd, especially if we have an identity like you and I have, which is we were just average when we were starting. But, there aren't that many people who have cycled 13,000 kilometers across Canada. So you're really in the 1% category, even though Matt might say, oh, I'm just an average guy. Well, you really aren't. Nonetheless, needless to say, it's actually just leveraging the way our system works to our advantage.
Yeah, I love that so much because I think we look for these quick hacks, life hacks, social media bombs. We just don't want to wait. So we're not gonna lose 1 pound a week. We're gonna lose 50 pounds, and we're not just gonna run, train for a 10K. We're gonna go all in and run that marathon in 3 months. And so many people say, I try, but I fall back, or I quit, or I fail. And as I said in my post yesterday, sorry, I haven't posted it yet, but you'll be seeing it soon. And I give a shout out to the book in it. If you focus on those daily wins, the incremental gains, you fall in love with the process of growth.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you stop being so concerned that there's this massive target on the horizon that just seems so far away, because what you're doing is you're looking down at your feet and you're seeing that step day to day, day to day. You ran ultra marathons, hundreds of ultra marathons. I cycled across Canada, and I think we both agree the way you did it is one step at a time.
Yeah.
And if you learn to sharpen your focus on those small incremental wins, you can absolutely change your life. So we're going to talk about that topic more. Again, we could come up with a list of a
Yeah, yeah, we
hundred.
could keep going.
But
Look, I think that at the end of the day, maybe we could leave everyone with this, like, I think we have to aim to sort of both fall in love with ourselves and respect ourselves and be accountable to ourselves, not to the world. And the more that we do that, the more we look in the mirror and say, do I like what I see or do I want to see something else? This process is the way to get there. The process of the daily accountability is the way to get there. Feelings of the highs and the lows is the way to get there, because it actually does continue to keep building incrementally. And that is the beauty of it. It actually is always productive. It always produces the results you want. By the way, Matt, like, what rush are we in? We're going to be here for a while. So we might as well get in the game and enjoy it.